I want to give you a little something for Wordsmith Wednesday, because we didn't get to do Wordsmith Wednesday, and so it's going to be Wordsmith Wednesday on Friday. And I want to give you what I teased a little bit earlier. It's going to be pretty awesome. It's one of my favorite writers, or was one of my favorite writers for a long, long time. The guy who really brought me into the world of fantasy big time when I was 10 years old. We'll talk some epic fantasy.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
Okay, the outer limits. I'm going to tell you about a guy here on our Booktube segment for former Star Trek writing fellow on Wordsmith Wednesday on a little different day. A guy who was in law school, in the same school where my brother went to law school, a number of years before my brother went to that school. And a guy who, when I was 10 years old, I read this book. It was 726 pages. It took me all over a month to read it. And I loved it so much, I was having dreams that I was reading it. And then when I would get up that summer when I was reading, I would have to go back a little ways because I couldn't remember what I had made up in the dream and what I had actually read. And that is, in fact, I'll show you on the screen. That is the very, very well-known author, the man pretty much seen as being responsible for bringing fantasy back after the great wave of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis in the 50s and 60s, bringing it back in the 1970s, his name being, of course, Terry Brooks. Terry Brooks just announced his retirement last month. A woman will be taking over the Shannara books. He pronounces it Shannara, not Shannara. And the first of those was released in 1977. 77 was The Sword of Shannara, or Shannara. And, of course, it introduced characters like Shay Olmsford and Flick Olmsford in a futuristic dystopia where some sort of Armageddon has reduced mankind to a medieval living state. They no longer have technology. They just have swords, metallurgy, horse carts, and some of the mutants are now given names that ring familiar with fantasy tropes, like the gnomes and the elves. They are just mutants. The trolls, they got hit by radiation and chemicals in the warfare. And in a little place called Shady Vale, Shay Olmsford and his half-brother Flick, Shay is he's really the half-brother. He has pointed ears, and Flick is the human, and they don't understand quite why Shay has the pointed ears. Well, it turns out that he is descended partially from elves. And he is the only one who can wield a magic talisman called the Sword of Shannara. And the sword was forged many, many eon ago, after the Great Armageddon, when dark magic wielders were corrupting the world. And an evil druid called Bremen was forming an army to try to take over the entire four lands, as the earth is now called. And he was fought by the other druids who formed the Sword of Shannara. And only one person now. They put it in the hands of the elven line so that the elves would continue to exist. And only one is left, and that is Shay Olmsford. So Shay and Flick are given a quest, and they have to go off. And they're joined by their friend Menyon Lay. And Menyon is sort of a roguish guy. Looks almost like Gene Kelly in a way. And, of course, as I mentioned, this is the hardcover version of the original, and this is the reissue a number of years later with the great artwork by the brothers Hildebrand. As I mentioned, they did the Star Wars poster for the original Star Wars, and they are identical, or were identical twins. And they had 48 hours to do that Star Wars poster, and they had to work round the clock to get it done. And they did, and people are just amazed by their skills. And they used to compare the brush strokes of the brothers Hildebrand, and they found that they were almost exactly identical. So one would go to sleep, the other would paint, and they got the Star Wars poster done. And of course, they've done many things. They used to do a lot of the Tolkien art before they got asked by Lester Del Rey to do the Sword of Shannara. Now, one of the things I want to tell you about Terry Brooks is, if you look at the Shannara series or the Shannara series, there are many, many, many books. For most people, the best series is the first trilogy, the Sword of Shannara with Shay and Flick, the Elfstones of Shannara with Will. No, the Elfstones of Shannara is with his, is it Will Olmsford? I can't remember. It's, yeah, it's Will Olmsford. And it has to do with something that they picked up that his father or grandfather, Shay Olmsford, picked up in Sword of Shannara. So it's generations later. It's about a generation and a half later. And the Druid Alanon is still there, this last of the Druids. And the Druids do what they call Druid sleep. They'll sleep for 70 years and come back. So he comes back, and the Elfstones that have been picked up in the first book by his ancestor, Will's ancestor, Shay Olmsford, are now very important. And then that has a further implication on the Wish Song of Shannara, the third story in the trilogy. Every one of those is excellent, but it was 5 years between the Sword of Shannara and Elfstones of Shannara, and people wondered, what is taking so long? Well, he did it right. Those first three are excellent. He also did a series of books after the Wish Song came out called the Magic Kingdom of Landover series. And you can see here, the Magic Kingdom of Landover sold. Now, if you look at this, I just want to show you this cover right here. That actually looks like Terry Brooks when he was in his maybe 40s. Terry Brooks went to law school at Washington and Lee University. My brother went to law school there. And so just before, I think, Wish Song came out, the alumni registry for Washington and Lee came out, and my brother pointed out to me, he goes, hey, you know, Terry Brooks's law firm in Illinois is listed here. So I wrote to Terry Brooks at his law firm, and he wrote back. He was really nice. He was like, wow, that's really cool that you found that in the thing. Thanks so much. And he said, you know, look forward to this coming out. And then I got to meet him. One of the nicest guys you will ever meet. Just such a nice guy. He moved from the Midwest, retired from law, moved from the Midwest and went out to the Western Pennsylvania, Pacific area, and started to actually expand some of the map for Sword of Shannara into that Western area and incorporate a lot of that in there. But one of the interesting things is, if you look at the Magic Kingdom book, well, actually, I'll give you two pieces of trivia. The first is Terry Brooks, the agent for Terry Brooks, who was there, told me, she said, well, the Magic Kingdom idea actually wasn't Terry's idea. Terry was looking for something different to do as a little break from the Sword of Shannara Four Lands world with the Olmsford and Alanon and the Olmsfords and things like that, and the Warlock Lord and stuff like that. And someone had sent an idea to Del Rey, Lester Del Rey, of the founder of Del Rey Books, at Ballantine Books. So Ballantine was the overall umbrella, and then the subunit for fantasy was Del Rey Books. And Lester Del Rey had been involved with Ballantine and helping put out a lot of the classic old ones, the Worm Ouroboros, the Tolkien books. They all had these sort of, they called them the Ballantine Del Rey fantasy line. And then they turned that into Lester Del Rey's fantasy, the adult fantasy line, I should say. And they had a ton of really, really good stuff. Hannes Bach and all sorts of great things. So Terry Brooks said, I'm looking for something different. And Lester said, and this is what the agent told me, so it could be apocryphal. He said, we've had this idea. We didn't take the guy's story, but maybe we could work something out. What do you think of this idea? And Terry's like, I love that idea. So he said, yeah, if you can work it out. So they made a deal for the man to sell the idea for Terry Brooks to write this concept. And the concept is that this sort of lonely attorney who works around the Chicago area, which is where Terry Brooks worked, gets a Christmas wish list. It's like a catalog, a wish catalog. And in it is a magic kingdom. And he's like, oh, what is this? Some sort of miniature thing at first? He's like, what is this? Some sort of joke or whatever. And so you can buy it, but it's a first come, first serve. You can buy this magic kingdom. So he buys it, and he gets this mysterious letter in the mail and tells him to arrive at such and such a place along the Blue Ridge Highway and get out of your car and go to such and such. He's like, man, I should be doing this. What's going on? Well, he does it. And what's really cool is if you read Magic Kingdom for Sale Sold, which is the first of the series. He's done a bunch of these books, and they're all really, really good. You'll find that the Magic Kingdom of Landover novels have a portal to get to the Magic Kingdom of Landover, and it's on the Blue Ridge Highway, the Blue Ridge Mountains, right near Washington and Lee University. The highway exists, and my brother mentioned to me, he goes, no, there's a particular sign that has the number 13 on it. And that sign exists. So Terry Brooks, literally on a road, on a map that he describes to this guy, puts the entrance to the Magic Kingdom of Landover literally in a spot where you can actually go. I don't know if the sign's still there now 30 years later, but you could go there. And you could walk along and see the spots, just like H.P. Lovecraft would do certain things where you could go and walk and you could go to these places. So very, very cool. And that is a wonderful series. It's very lighthearted. It's very, very good. Now, the Shannara books are very interesting as well, because a lot of people accuse Terry Brooks of having lifted the Lord of the Rings story. The template. There's a big company that's put together. There's a king who's being manipulated and sort of deranged. There's the evil lord that's coming back from years and years and years and years and is going to take over the world. There's one person, and in this case, instead of getting rid of the ring, he has to wield this sword. The confrontation at the end is wonderful. But I just want to say, and for me, what's weird is I read The Hobbit a couple times, but read sort of Shannara before I read Lord of the Rings. So for me, the template was not Middle Earth for fantasy. It was future dystopia like Canticle for Leibowitz, if anybody's familiar with that. So essentially, I was already into that dystopian thing because Planet of the Apes, I loved Planet of the Apes. I love dystopian stuff like, the world has collapsed and what's it going to be like? There's a lot of speculation about that. So that's what Terry Brooks does. In the very early chapters, he has this great scene as Alan the Druid starts to give you some of this history. And it's so interesting. It's a great book. It's such a great book. I recommend it to anybody. And if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings and you think that it rings too much like Lord of the Rings, Terry Brooks, he freely admits, he goes, yeah, I think I was influenced a little bit too much, maybe lifted too many of the sort of tropes and things like that now. But he took with Elfstones and Wish Song and the whole rest of the series, he expanded. He had airships and islands off the coast and did all sorts of stuff. He did amazing stuff. And what's also really interesting is he came out with another series called Running with the Demon. It's called The Word and the Void. Okay, that was 1997. Running with the Demon. Now that's actually seen more as a horror or dark thriller novel. It's set in the contemporary world as the world is starting to run down and evil is starting to come out. What's really cool is he tied the Word and the Void series as the world starts to go haywire. He ties it into the sort of Shannara world as the apocalypse approaches. And I'll just give you a quick spoiler here, so beware. When you get to Angel Fire East, this Angel Fire East story and a couple of the others that follow There's a whole series of them. You discover that the good people, almost in a sort of the Stand type motif, you discover that the good people in this world who are shown to have these special abilities, they're the ones who form the first Druid Council. And in his world, the Druids are the good guys. They're sort of like the white wizards, like Gandalf. There's Al-Anon, who's like the Gandalf character. So the earliest of that group comes from this Word and the Void series. And he wrote it after writing, I think, probably 7 or 8 of the Shannara books. So he was able to tie that all together. It's really, really interesting, very interesting stuff. And he's got tons and tons of other things. Now, the only thing that I want to mention to you here is the second series that he did, called The Heritage of Shannara or Shannara, starts really, really well with the Scions. That's the second series, okay? And you'll see a picture of Al-Anon right here. There's Al-Anon, okay? That's Al-Anon, and he's talking to, that's one of the descendants of Shay Olmsford. That's a guy named Walker Bow, who's, I think he might be descended from Menyon Lay, from Menyon. And so they all are sort of like a familial sort of a thing, right? It's all sort of a family sort of tie. But what is a little tricky here is if you go from Scions of Shannara, these are the descendants of the Shannara line, right? Al-Anon is still around. You got the Druid of Shannara. That's a big one. And then Elf Queen of Shannara. And then the final of the quartet, the Talismans of Shannara, okay? Well, as you read, the first one starts really well. The Druid of Shannara is also pretty good, but it doesn't seem to have the same sort of epic feel. It's more like an episode in a TV series. And you know there's something else that's coming. And then Elf Queen, it really drags. There's so much introspection. And then it wraps up with Talismans, which is a pretty good ending, but I'll give you the other down note to this. There are 2 to this quartet. The first down note comes with Elf Queen. What I found out was that Terry Brooks originally wrote The Heritage of Shannara as the Scions of Shannara, as the Scions. And it was one 1,000-page book, sort of like To Green Tower Angel by Tad Williams. It was a 1,000-page single tome, and it would have been epic, like amazingly great. But you know how it is when you have a fellowship story and a fantasy. They go off in different directions. They have different adventures. So you tell different parts of the story in different chapters. You run them parallel to each other. Then they typically will come back in various forms. And some of the things that they've done contribute to the great success in the end. As they've learned things, they've overcome things, and then they get back together to help each other at the end. That's typically the way the fellowship stories go, right? The publisher asked Terry Brooks to break it into multiple books to be able to get greater sales. So he went back and rewrote some of the books. I don't think he did as much rewriting on Scions, but I think after the initial first few hundred pages of Scions, the rest of it he rewrote and expanded. So when you get to Druid of Shannara, that sort of ends rather rapidly. Then you get to Elf Queen of Shannara. Elf Queen is filled with a bunch of fill. It's just really slow. And then finally, Talismans picks back up again. And the other thing that I'll mention is between Scions and Druid. Now, again, there's a bit of a spoiler here. There's this thing called the Black Elf Stone in the Shannara series. It's a dark, evil talisman. And the character of Walker Bow that I mentioned, who's descendant of Menyon Lay, Walker is just he's just a woodsman. But he is helping out fighting the resurgence of this evil. And Walker has to get rid of the Black Elf Stone at the end of Scions, the first of this new quartet. So at the end of Scions, he grabs it, and the Dark Elf Stone starts to poison his body, and his right arm starts to turn to stone. So he has to cut it off at basically the wrist, or even before, maybe even higher up. And that's where it ends. He's wandering around the wastelands, and it ends there. Well, somebody in the editing department screwed up, because if you have one of the early copies of the Druid of Shannara, you'll see that Druid of Shannara has Walker Bow wandering around the wastelands, just like he was at the end of Scions. And he falls because he's losing blood. He's in bad shape. He's exhausted. And these wastelands are like these slate stones and crumbled up. It's almost like Washington State, like the Black Desert in Washington State. It's like that. In fact, maybe Terry Brooks even based it on that. I don't know. But anyway, so they have him fall forward. And literally in the book, this is like in the first couple pages, he falls, and it says he falls on his hands. Well, he cut off one of his hands at the end of the last book. He doesn't have two hands. He has one hand. Like, if I had the book, I could read it to you right now. It's like, wait, that literally slipped past the editor in the first, 5 pages? Are you kidding? No way. That's ridiculous. But it's there. It's there. It's like Cold Mountain. That book, Cold Mountain, by, what's his name, Fraser? Was it Charles Fraser? The early releases of Cold Mountain have a typo on page 37 that instead of saying mad-woman, it says man-woman, which, nowadays, I guess people wouldn't even think about that. But back then, people saw it as an error. It's supposed to say mad woman. But there were only 1,000 of them printed. And I guess that book is worth thousands of dollars now. I actually had a copy. And then I gave my brother that copy to read one time, and he still had it. And then he gave me his copy or something. So my brother's got that copy somewhere. I don't know where, but it's worth a lot of money now. So it's very interesting when you see these things. I don't know if that version of the Terry Brooks book is worth anything. I don't even know if they corrected it, because there were so many printed. It probably, there are probably tens of thousands of those out there. But it was a big error on his part and on the part of the editors. So, they should have caught that. You don't fall forward on your hands if you just cut your hand off in the end of the last book. But I'll just say this: if you do get a chance, I think you really like the Shannara series, and there are tons and tons and tons of them. And you can see towards the end, he even brings the Black Elfstone back in the Fall of Shannara. So it's cool. There's a lot of stuff there that it's very readable. I would say if you want to think about the writing style, it's not as elevated as Tolkien's might be. It's not even, nowhere near the Jacobean style of E.R. Edison from the Worm or Ouroboros or Ouroboros. It's more in line with what you might get from C.S. Lewis in, say, something like That Hideous Strength or something like that. It's very, very conversant. It's smooth. The dialogue is excellent. The character outlines are all great. It's a real solid read. It's above. I'd say it's a couple notches above just average writing style. It's not as high level as what you might get from Tolkien or something like that, or somebody like Edgar Allan Poe or Lovecraft at his best. Sometimes Lovecraft would get too wordy, but excellent stuff. Really, really good. So just want to recommend. And if you do get one of the original paperbacks, they've got the fold out by the brothers Hildebrand. And it's just beautiful, wonderful. All the artwork, there are tons of black and white images in there. Great artwork from the brothers Hildebrand. And I actually have a book called The Art of the Brothers Hildebrand, and they have some of the still photos that they took of the models that they used for those in their chainmail and their leather jerkins and stuff like that. And you can see the human beings upon whom they based characters like Menyon and a girl named Cheryl Ravenlock and so on. And wow, what a beautiful woman in the stories. And then you see the real photograph of whoever the friend of theirs was. It was just a friend of theirs, and she posed for it, and it's pretty neat, It's pretty cool stuff. So very, very good. So I highly recommend. You probably don't need me to recommend Terry Brooks, but if you think about some of these interesting little anecdotes about Terry Brooks, he sold the novel when he was 35, and then practiced law in his spare time, sort of thing, and then just retired. Now retired from law. Now he's retired, and he said, I want to retire without losing a step. He says, I don't want to be in a situation where, as I get older, I'm full of pride and I'm still doing what I think I'm doing, but the novels really aren't up to snuff. So he's handed it over to a young woman who will continue the Shannara series. The other drawback that I want to mention, I forgot this, is at the end of the quartet, the second of the series of the Shannara books, I think Terry Brooks made a mistake. Because if you look at the original Shannara series, you can see the Sword of Shannara, the Elfstones of Shannara, the Wish Song of Shannara, right? They are, and he did a prequel called The First King of Shannara, all about Al-Anon as a young guy and Al-Anon becoming a druid. It's very interesting stuff. But in none of these stories, including Wish Song, which is really interesting, it shows the effects of the use of magic generationally on this family line and what happens to these people. Very interesting stuff. But and don't watch the TV series. It's ridiculous. They started with Elfstones. They didn't start with Sword. If they're going to do Sword of Shannara, they have to do it on an epic fashion. They really got to go all out and do it right. But the Sword of Shannara series, in the original series, Terry Brooks doesn't explain where the magic comes from. It's very mysterious. It's like magic. What is this? Is this good or bad, or what is this? There's no sign of any, kind of religion. It's all done in a sort of materialist worldview. There's no Christianity. There's nothing really mentioned about that. And for me as a person, as I've mentioned here, my mom was Catholic, my dad was Protestant, so we never really went to church. So I really didn't have any Christian beliefs until later, when I started to look into things and teach philosophy. And then I realized that the stories of Christ were true, and I read a lot about those things and stuff. And I thought, oh wow, I've been missing out a lot. I'm glad I'm still here to be able to save my soul. And so it's interesting because he doesn't touch on those things too much about the source of the magic or anything like that. It's very mysterious, sort of spooky. What's going on? You got this dark character called the Warlock Lord. He's operating dark magic. It's evil. What is this? Okay, what about the other source of the magic? The Druids. Now, the Druids in ancient Ireland were called the Men of the Oak, was the Druid. And that's their history. And, they dealt in dark arts, but some of them actually didn't. Some of them, it was a little bit not as dark as you might think. It was more traditional and so on. It wasn't Christian, it was pagan, but it wasn't all sacrifices as they were depicted. So Terry Brooks picks up on that. And in fact, the Druids, actually, there's a book called How the Irish Saved Civilization. And it's all about the Druids and how they basically kept Euclidean geometry going during the Dark Ages. And because they would study it, they would rewrite it over and over again. And it was very interesting. The Druids are quite fascinating people. And so Terry Brooks picked up on that. And the unfortunate thing is, all I'm going to say is, and this is a bit of a spoiler, so beware if you're listening to this, just beware. At the end of the fourth book in the Heritage of Shannara, the Talismans of Shannara, or Shannara, okay, he explains the source of the magic. And it's got political, environmental overtones. That's all I'm going to say. I'll say it's got, well, by necessity, it has environmental overtones, not necessarily political by party or statism or anything like that. But I inferred political overtones from it because of the intensity of the environmental message. So just keep it in mind. And I don't want that to dissuade people from reading it. If you do hear this, I'm not going to go overt into what the meaning is. You can discover for yourself. Maybe that'll be tantalizing just to discover that. Like, how exactly does he express it? But he does drop something in there, and you're sort of like, oh, shoot, bummer, bummer, bummer. So I'll just leave it at that. Now, in the meantime, I want to read you a story. And we'll take some comments. Anybody read Sword of Shannara? Let's talk about it live. Let's see what you have to say. Fans of Lord of the Rings sometimes don't like Terry Brooks. I love Terry Brooks. I mean, he's a really nice guy. Wrote to me a couple times, met him a couple times, really good guy. And his stories have just been wonderful. Always fun to read, except those sometimes they were a little hit or miss every once in a while. But yeah, you let me know what you think. And yeah, we've got lots of interesting things to talk about for Booktube. That's for darn sure. I love talking about books. It's a blast. Okay, so now let me get into, and if you have some comments about that, let me know. I know that Travis Knight looks at Lord of the Rings, the movie series, as being the greatest movie series ever made. Says the greatest trilogy, hands down. And I wonder what other people think about that. But in the meantime, let me give you a little something that I want to read for you. And I've got it over here. We have a number of options, but this is a book called Terrors, edited by Helen Hoke. And I'm going to ask you, we'll give our Bad Attitude of the Week award maybe Monday or something like that. We'll catch up or something. But I want to ask you what you think about this. And we have a comment from Brian to put up at the end of the show as well over on X. He's got a comment about some of the news information we were offering. How would you like me to read? You have a choice. Would you like me to read a story by Davis Grubb? And Davis Grubb has a collection, by the way, over here. He's pretty well known for his short stories. I've got a collection by him. This is cool. There's a story by Davis Grubb in here, and it is called 1 Foot in the Grave. A story by Robert Bloch, the writer of Psycho, called Sweets to the Sweet. Or a story by, let's see, C.L. Ray, called The Corner Shop. Okay, so again, here are your options. 1 Foot in the Grave by Davis Grubb. Sweets to the Sweet by Robert Bloch, the man who wrote Psycho. The Corner Shop by C.L. Ray. Oh, The Black Cat is in here too by Edgar Allan Poe. All right, so again, you put your options in there and we'll see what you have to say. Let's see what you think. The people at Davidson, they're debating the virus thing. Yes, Taylor Saunders, Sword of Shannara audio, YouTube, 11 hours. Awesome. And you can find War and Ouroboros over there too, Taylor. If you want to check that out, just if you get a chance, check out the first 30 minutes or 20 minutes of the War and Ouroboros. I'm telling you, man, it is like the sweetest food. It's so good. It's amazingly good. So good. Really, really good. Okay. So let's see. We're going to go with, yeah, David says virology was brought up to con people into vaccines. I think you're a little temporally off, unfortunately, on that, David, but we can debate it some other time if you want to, because it's, there wasn't a causative effect on that to bring about an excuse for the vaccines. That's for darn sure. There was something more to it, but anyway, I've got an open mind on it, but I haven't seen convincing evidence to tell me that the cause and effect relationship I'm seeing is something other than catching something. Now, what it might be, we can talk about it. We'll talk about it. Okay. And I don't want to sound obsequious or condescending in any way, just got to leave the door open for me. Anyway. Okay. I'm going to read Robert Bloch, Sweets to the Sweet, page 23. Here we go. All right. Ooh, some cool artwork in here too. Very cool artwork. Sweets to the Sweet by Robert Bloch. Irma didn't look like a witch. She had small, regular features, a peaches and cream complexion, blue eyes, and fair, almost ash blonde hair. Besides, she was only 8 years old. "Why does he tease her so?" sobbed Miss Paul. "That's where she got the idea in the first place, because he calls her a little witch." Sam Stever bulked his paunch back into the squeaky swivel chair and folded his heavy hands in his lap. His fat lawyer's mask was immobile, but he was really quite distressed. Women like Miss Paul should never sob. Their glasses wiggle, their thin noses twitch, their creasy eyelids redden, and their stringy hair becomes disarrayed. "Please, control yourself," coaxed Sam Stever. "Perhaps if we could just talk this whole thing over sensibly." "I don't care," Miss Paul sniffled. I'm not going back there again. I can't stand it. There's nothing I can do anyway. The man is your brother, and she's your brother's child. It's not my responsibility. I've tried." "Of course you've tried," Sam Stever smiled benignly, as if Miss Paul were foreman of a jury. "I quite understand, but I still don't see why you're so upset, dear lady." Miss Paul removed her spectacles and dabbed at her eyes with a floral print handkerchief. Then she deposited the soggy ball in her purse, snapped the catch, replaced her spectacles, and sat up straight. "Very well, Mr. Stever," she said. "I shall do my best to acquaint you with my reasons for quitting your brother's employ." She suppressed a tardy sniff. "I came to John Stever 2 years ago in response to an advertisement for a housekeeper, as you know. When I found that I was to be governess to his motherless 6-year-old child, I was at first distressed. I know nothing of the care of children." "John had a nurse the first 6 years," Sam Stever nodded. "You know Irma's mother died in childbirth." "I'm aware of that," said Miss Paul primly. "Naturally, one's heart goes out to a lonely, neglected little girl, and she was so terribly lonely, Mr. Stever. If you could have seen her moping around in the corners of the big, old, ugly house." "I have seen her," said Sam Stever hastily, hoping to forestall another outburst. "And I know what you've done for Irma. My brother is inclined to be thoughtless, even a bit selfish at times. He doesn't understand." "He's cruel," declared Miss Paul, suddenly vehement. "Cruel and wicked. Even if he is your brother, I say he's no fit father for any child. When I came there, her little arms were black and blue from beatings. He used to take a belt." "I know. Sometimes I think John never recovered from the shock of Mrs. Stever's death. That's why I was so pleased when you came, dear lady. I thought you might help the situation." "I tried," Miss Paul whimpered. "You know I tried. I never raised a hand to that child in 2 years, though many's the time your brother has told me to punish her. 'Give the little witch a beating,' he used to say. 'That's all she needs, a good thrashing.' And then she'd hide behind my back and whisper to me to protect her. But she wouldn't cry, Mr. Stever. Do you know, I've never seen her cry." Sam Stever felt vaguely irritated and a bit bored. He wished the old hen would get on with it, so he smiled and oozed treacle. "But just what is your problem, dear lady?" "Everything was all right when I came there. We got along just splendidly. I started to teach Irma to read and was surprised to find that she had already mastered reading. Your brother disclaimed having taught her, but she spent hours curled up on the sofa with a book. 'Just like her,' he used to say, 'a natural little witch. Doesn't play with the other children, little witch.' That's the way he kept talking, Mr. Stever. Just like her. As if she were some sort of, I don't know what. And she's so sweet and quiet." "Is it any wonder that she read?" "Oh, sorry," she continues. "Is it any wonder that she read? I used to be that way myself when I was a girl because, well, never mind that. Still, it was a shock that day I found her looking through the Encyclopedia Britannica. "What are you reading, Irma?" I asked, and she showed me. It was the article on witchcraft. You see what morbid thoughts your brother has inculcated into her poor little head? I did my best. I went out and bought some toys. She had absolutely nothing, not even a doll. She didn't even know how to play. I tried to get her interested in some of the other little girls in the neighborhood, but it was no use. They didn't understand her, and she didn't understand them. There were actually scenes. Children can be cruel and thoughtless, and her father wouldn't let her go to public school. I was to teach her. Then I brought her the modeling clay. When she liked that, she would spend hours just making faces with clay. For a child of 6, Irma displayed real talent. We made little dolls together, and I sewed clothes for them. That first year was a happy one, Mr. Stever, particularly during those months when your brother was away in South America. But this year, when he came back, I can't bear to talk about it. Please, said Sam Stever. You must understand, John, he's not a happy man. The loss of his wife, the decline of his import trade, and his drinking. Well, you know all that. All I know is that he hates Irma, snapped Miss Paul suddenly. He hates her. He wants her to be bad so he can whip her. If you don't discipline the little witch, I shall, he always says. And then he takes her upstairs and thrashes her with his belt. You must do something, Mr. Stever, or I'll go to the authorities myself. The crazy old biddy. Well, she might do that, Sam Stever thought. Remedy. Well, the remedy had to be more treacle. But about Irma, he persisted. Well, she's changed too. Ever since her father returned this year, she won't play with me anymore, hardly looks at me. It's as though I failed her, Mr. Stever, in not protecting her from that man. Besides, she thinks she is a witch. Crazy. Stark, staring crazy. Sam Stever creaked upright in his chair. Oh, you needn't look at me like that, Mr. Stever. She'll tell you so herself, if you ever visit the house. He caught the reproach in her voice and assuaged it with a deprecating nod. She told me all right. If her father wants her to be a witch, she'll be a witch. And she won't play with me or anyone else because witches don't play. Last Halloween, she wanted me to give her a broomstick. Oh, it would be funny if it weren't so tragic. That child is losing her sanity. Just a few weeks ago, I thought she had changed. That's when she asked me to take her to church one Sunday. I want to see the baptism, she said. Imagine that, an 8-year-old interested in baptism. Reading too much, that's what does it. Well, we went to church, and she was as sweet as can be, wearing her new blue dress and holding my hand. I was proud of her, Mr. Stever, really proud. But after that, she went right back into her shell, reading all around the house, and then running through the yard at twilight and talking to herself. Perhaps it's because your brother wouldn't bring her a kitten. She was pestering him for a black kitten, and he asked why, and she said, because witches always have black cats. Then he took her upstairs. I can't stop him, He beat her again the night the power failed, and we couldn't find the candles. He said she had stolen them. Imagine that, accusing an 8-year-old child of stealing candles. That was the beginning of the end. Then, today, when he found his hairbrush missing. You say he would beat her with his hairbrush? Oh, yes. She admitted having stolen it, in fact. She said she wanted it for her doll. But didn't you say she has no dolls? She made one. At least, I think she did. I've never seen it. She won't show us anything anymore. Won't talk to us at a table for dinner. Just impossible to handle her. But this doll she made. But this doll she made. It's a small one. I know, because at times she carries it tucked under her arm. She talks to it and pets it, but she won't show it to me or to him. He asked her about the hairbrush, and she said she took it for the doll. Your brother flew into a terrible rage then. He had been drinking in his room all morning. Oh, don't think I don't know about that. And she just smiled and said he could have it now. She went over to her bureau and handed it to him. She hadn't harmed it in the least. His hair was still in it, I noticed. But he snatched it up, and he started to strike her about the shoulders with it, and he twisted her arm, and then he... Miss Paul huddled in her chair and summoned great racking sobs from her thin chest. Sam Stever patted her shoulder, fussing about her like an elephant over a wounded canary, big to small. That's all. That's all, Mr. Stever. That was all. I came right to you then. I'm not even going back to that house, not ever, to get my things. I can't stand it anymore. The way he beat her, the way she didn't cry, just giggled and giggled. Sometimes I think she is a witch, that he made her into a witch. And there's a time break. Sam Stever picked up the phone. The ringing had broken the relief of silence after Miss Paul's hasty departure. Hello, that you, Sam? He recognized his brother's voice, somewhat the worse for wear from drinking. Yes, John. I suppose the old bat came running straight to you to shoot her mouth off? If you mean Miss Paul, I've seen her, yes. Pay no attention. I can explain everything. Do you want me to stop in? I haven't paid you a visit in months. Oh, not now. Got an appointment with the doctor this evening. Something wrong? I got a pain in my arm. It's rheumatism or something. You're getting a little diathermy. But I'll call you tomorrow, and we'll straighten this whole mess out. Right. But John Stever did not call the next day. Along about supper time, Sam called him. Surprisingly enough, Irma answered the phone. Her thin, squeaky little voice sounded faintly in Sam's ears. Daddy's upstairs sleeping. He's been sick. Well, don't disturb him. What is it? His arm? His back now. He has to go to the doctor again in a little while. Well, tell him I'll call tomorrow then. Everything all right, Irma? I mean, don't you miss Miss Paul? No. I'm glad she went away. She's stupid. Oh, yes, I see. But you phone me if you want anything, and I hope your daddy's better. Yes, so do I, said Irma. And then she began to giggle. And then she hung up. There was no giggling the following afternoon when John Stever called Sam at the office. His voice was sober, with the sharp sobriety of pain. Sam, for God's sake, get over here. Something's happening to me. What's the trouble? The pain, it's killing me. I've got to see you, quickly. There's a client in my office, but I'll get rid of him. Say, wait a minute. Why don't you call the doctor? That quack, he can't help me. He gave me a diathermy for my arm, and yesterday he said the same thing and gave it to me for my back. Didn't it help? The pain went away, yes, but it's back now. I feel like I'm being crushed, like I'm being squeezed in the chest. I can't breathe. Sounds like pleurisy. Why don't you call him? Call that doctor. It isn't pleurisy. He examined me, said I was sound as a dollar. No, there's nothing organically wrong, and I couldn't tell him the real cause. Real cause? Yes. The pins. The pin that little fiend is sticking into the doll she made, into the arm, the back, and now heaven only knows how she's causing this. John, you mustn't. Oh, what's the use of talking? I can't move off the bed here. She has me now. I can't go down and stop her. I can't get hold of the doll. And nobody else would believe it anyway. But it is the doll, all right. The one she made with the candle wax and the hair from my brush. Oh, it hurts to talk. That cursed little witch. Hurry, Sam. I promise you'll do something. Anything. Get that doll from her. Get that doll. Half an hour later, at 4:30, Sam Stever entered his brother's house. Irma opened the door. It gave Sam a shock to see her standing there, smiling and unperturbed, pale blonde hair brushed immaculately back from the rosy oval face. She looked just like a little doll. Like a little doll. "Hello, Uncle Sam." "Hello, Irma. Your daddy called me. Did he tell you?" "He said he wasn't feeling well." "I know, but he's all right now. He's sleeping." Something happened to Sam Stever. A drop of ice water trickled down his spine. "Sleeping," he croaked. "Upstairs?" Before she opened her mouth to answer, he was bounding up the steps to the second floor, striding down the hall to John's bedroom. John lay on the bed. He was asleep, and only asleep. Sam Stever noted the regular rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. His face was calm and relaxed. Then the drop of ice water evaporated, and Sam could afford to smile and murmur, "Oh, nonsense," under his breath as he turned away. He went downstairs, and as he went, he hastily improvised some plans. A 6-month vacation for his brother, perhaps. Avoid calling it a cure. An orphanage for Irma. Give her a chance to get away from this morbid old house. All these books. He paused halfway down the stairs. Peering over the banister through the twilight, he saw Irma on the sofa, cuddled up like a little white ball. She was talking to something she cradled in her arms, rocking it to and fro. Then there was a doll, after all. Sam Stever tiptoed very quietly down the stairs and walked over to Irma. "Hello," he said. She jumped. Both arms rose to cover completely whatever it was she had been fondling. She squeezed it tightly. Sam Stever thought of a doll being squeezed across the chest. Irma stared up at him, her face a mask of innocence. In the half-light, her face did resemble a mask. The mask of a little girl covering for what? "Daddy's better now, isn't he?" lisped Irma. "Yes, much better. I knew he would be. But I'm afraid he's going to have to go away for a rest, a long rest." A smile filtered through her mask. "Good," said Irma. "Of course," Sam went on, "you couldn't stay here all alone. I was wondering, maybe we could send you off to school or to some kind of a home." Irma giggled. "Oh, you needn't worry about me," she said. She shifted about on the sofa as Sam sat down, then sprang up quickly as he came close to her. Her arms shifted with the movement, and Sam Stever saw a pair of tiny legs dangling down below her elbow. There were trousers on the legs and little bits of leather for shoes. "What's that you have there, Irma?" he asked. Is it a doll?" Slowly, he extended his pudgy hand. She pulled back. "You can't see it," she said. "But I want to. Miss Paul said you made such lovely dolls." "Miss Paul is stupid. So are you. Go away." "Please, Irma, let me see it." But even as he spoke, Sam Stever was staring at the top of the doll, momentarily revealed when she backed away. It was a head, all right, with wisps of hair over a white face. Dusk dimmed the features, but Sam somehow recognized the eyes and the nose and the chin. He could keep up the pretense no longer. Give me that doll, Irma, he snapped. I know what it is. I know who it is. For an instant, her mask slipped, and Sam Stever stared into naked fear. She knew. She knew he knew. Then, just as quickly, the mask was replaced. Irma was only a sweet, spoiled, stubborn little girl, as she shook her head merrily and smiled with impish mischief in her eyes. Oh, Uncle Sam, she giggled. You're so silly. Why, this isn't a real doll. What is it then? He muttered. Irma giggled once more, raising the figure as she spoke. Why, it's only candy, Irma said. Candy? Irma nodded. Then very swiftly, she slipped the tiny head of the image into her mouth and bit it off. There was a single piercing scream from upstairs. As Sam Stever turned and ran up the stairs, little Irma, still gravely munching, skipped out of the front door and into the night beyond. That from Robert Bloch, called Sweets to the Sweet. The man who wrote Psycho. So, interesting stuff. Now, this is from a book called Terrors, 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 selected by Helen Hoke. And it came out from the Franklin Watts Publishing Company in 1979, if you're looking for the collection. And like I said, it has stories by Edgar Allan Poe, Manly Wade Wellman, Robert Sheckley, Robert Bloch, Davis Grubb, and others, C.L. Ray. And that's pretty interesting stuff. 1979. And this originally came from the Parchment Middle School in Parchment, Michigan. So this came from their school. Pretty neat. Pretty neat stuff. I like that very much. Oh, man. Let's see what you think about the story and things like that. We've got some good comments in here. We've got, yeah, I'd love to have the Baileys on. That'd be great. Yeah, Sam Bailey. I used to love watching her before. I mean, she only had like 100 followers on YouTube. I used to love watching her. It's great, great, great stuff. And Taylor Saunders is there. Creepy girl. Very heady. So true. Absolutely. And yeah, you know, I've got a little bit more of Tower, but I'll read that to you during the week next week. I want to add a little more to it to make it worth your while, make it valuable, and just leave that short story there for you from that book, Terrors, 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 selected by Helen Hoke, H-O-K-E, if you're looking for it. You can get it probably for, you know, $4 or $5. And that's a nice little hardcover to carry around with it. The sort of thing you put in your backpack coming back from, you know, 3rd grade or whatever. Good stuff. And please remember, good Sword of Shannara stuff. Terry Brooks. Can't go wrong with Terry Brooks. He was fun all the time. And kudos to Terry Brooks for a wonderful career and being kind to me as well. What a nice man. Great, great guy. And so I'll leave you with that for former Star Trek writing fellow. And check out the Shannara series. There's even more to say about the Magic Kingdom of Landover series. Those are fantastic books. And if you get an opportunity, don't watch the Shannara TV show. I hope someday they do it right. A lot of people have been hoping for a Shannara movie, and it would be really great. It would be phenomenal if they did it as maybe a 2-part movie. It would be wonderful. Got to get the right actors. But in the meantime, check out the books. The first story is wonderful. Even if you're a fan of Tolkien, it'll be sort of familiar ground, but slightly not. Characters are terrific. And then later, after the Sword of Shannara, he just, you know, takes it in his own direction, and they're great stories. That second quartet, the 4 books, kind of difficult at times. But then the rest of those, I haven't been able to read all of them, but you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of them. Especially if you have a older teenager. awesome. I'm just talking about candy. It's just wonderful. And it's more substantive than that too. But again, just please keep it in mind. There isn't any sort of Christian analog or parallel in there. There's none of that lesson in there that you might get from Tolkien or C.S. Lewis. So if you want to be able to discuss things at a secondary spiritual level, on a Christian level, really go with Tolkien or go with C.S. Lewis, obviously, some of those. And there's some other really good ones. Like I said, Robert Hugh Benson, E.F. Benson's brother, terrific. He's the one who was an Anglican and then converted to Catholicism. He's written a lot of stuff that has a lot of really good Christian parables inside them. So good stuff. And one of them, as I mentioned, I think it's Master of the World. That's a dystopian book. And it is, I think it ranks up there with some of the best dystopian novels of the 20th century. It's really, the stuff he predicts, really impressive, very impressive, especially looking at what happened in Great Britain. That was where he was. And he was right about a lot of the ways that they fell away from Christianity, and some of the weird technocratic things that he put into the book that have really been borne out. Good stuff. Remember, Robert Hugh Benson is his name. You can look him up. We spoke about him before. I'll do a separate show about Robert Hugh Benson. Really interesting guy. And also, I'm going to start doing some lists on some of my favorite short stories. And I want to remind you again, if you have some really good ideas for short stories, or you have your own lists, I'd love to open up the lines and have you come in, tell me some of the stories you think are your best. Maybe we'll do that next week for a segment on the show. Have a couple people come in. We'll open up the video line. You can tell me what some of the scariest short stories are, or what you consider to be some of the scariest things you've ever seen in movies or anything like that. That'll be fun. Good stuff. All right, I better hit the road. I'm going to leave you with the Outer Limits control voice. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I want to thank you again for watching on Former Star Trek Writing Fellow. And do keep in mind that you can find the Former Star Trek Writing Fellow episodes on YouTube and on Rumble. And if you like what we're doing there and you want to support what we're doing just with that, just go to the Gardner Goldsmith Substack. And if you're a paid subscriber over there, you'll get my daily news notes over there about the news updates from a pro-liberty peace angle, and a lot of research in my lectures on political philosophy and economics, my writing on economics and things like that. And I'm planning to do more for some of those subscribers on what it's like to work in television and things from my days at Star Trek and the Outer Limits. So that'll be fun. And if you want to support what we're doing at Liberty Conspiracy Monday through Friday, we're here live at 6 p.m. Great audiences inside the Rumble chat. I'm going to start buying that fruit stripe gum and giving out prizes for that. That'll be fun. And you can also stream us on my X feed, and that's at Gard Goldsmith. And remember, we are very reliant on your contributions. If you like what we're doing, you think we've given you some chunks of value, please consider becoming a monthly subscriber, donating at my Substack. That's a great way to do it. Just a couple bucks a month is very, very good. I really appreciate it and love to bring you in. So hopefully we're giving you value too. So I'll leave you with the Outer Limits. As their control voice says, we now return control of your television set to you. Until next time. And I will think about more good stories. And yes, next week, before we even get to Wednesday, I'll give you an update on what's going on in my novella, Tower. And yes, you can find my fiction on Amazon. So thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for sharing. A lot of different opinions also inside Rumble, which is awesome. And it's just a really, really fruitful and very kind place to share ideas. Thanks, everybody. Remember, Liberty Conspiracy Monday through Friday, streaming on Rumble, and then Former Star Trek Writing Fellow and my X feed at Gard Goldsmith and Substack. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you, Terry Brooks.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the Outer Limits.